So welcome everyone. Today I'll be covering a technical session on AWS Simple Storage Service. It is called S3. Okay. So basically to highlight on this service, it is in particular to the data store, what AWS provides, and basically any type of file, may it be a image file, video, or large files like the data analytics file, the CSV file, uh, the data that is being used for visualization, like the big data. All those things can be stored in S3, and then once you have that data with you, you can process it using different services provided by AWS. So no matter how big the data is, in terms of scaling or availability, S3 is a big solution to that problem. So it doesn't have any limit of storage. However, at the initial account creation, they specify a fixed number, but if you reach out to the support and increase that number, then practically there is no limit on the amount of data that you can store. Okay, so let's begin. So as I mentioned earlier, it's an object storage service, and it provides you the scalability. So currently, if you do not have that much of data to be stored, but let's say in future, your data will grow based on the request or based on the users that will access your platform. So you don't have to actually provision or maintain a data store that will eventually grow, but AWS provides you with an inbuilt mechanism that allows you to scale based on the data that you put in the S3. In terms of data availability, let's say your current data is stored in one region. That is, your data is stored in US. For some reason, the place where that data center resides, it catches fire, or some natural calamity occurs, and there is a chances of losing that entire information. So in such cases, they replicate this data in another regions, like it can be in Asia or it can be in Africa. So your data is kept at multiple data centers. So even if one region is affected, still your data will be available and can be retrieved from another region. Next thing is the security. So it provides you with a default encryption mechanism at rest, and even if you have your own key that will encrypt the data, so it is also available. It is also given to you that privilege that you can actually encrypt that data using your key or the managed key provided by the AWS. Next, when it comes to the performance, when you are reading this information or data that is being stored in S3, it is very quick. So normally the amount of time that you need when you store the large data, it is kind of to access the data, it will take a lot of time. But in S3, they have this different other configurations available, which allows you to access their data with lowest latency possible. So there are services like CloudFront, which works like a CDN. So when you use the S3 with CDN, it will provide you with the data at a much faster speed. Then also it provides you with a transfer acceleration. So basically, if you need to transfer some GBs of data, so that's transfer acceleration will help you in transferring that data more quicker form. So this is like some of the offerings of S3. Let's understand how exactly the S3 is helpful in your day-to-day activities. So normally, no matter the type of data, as I said before, so if you have the analytics data, you put it to S3 and you want to perform the operation to analyze how exactly this data is being used or the platform is being used. So if I want to know the patterns of different users, like how Facebook and other social media platform use your overall web history, the tracking, what are the products that you search for, or what are your preferences. So all those analytics related operations can be performed by storing the entire that data set into S3. And then there are other services which can be used along with S3. Like if there is another service called as personalize. So this personalized service works with S3 to generate and get all the products that are being widely visited by the customers, or if you want to improve the personal experience for that user, then even to that level, it generates the data, it generates the products, or it generates their preferences, and it is given to you by running through the machine learning models. And that information you can then pass on to the user. Another thing is storing of log files. So some of the times it is not known where exactly the application is failing, or what is the performance issues in the application or the platform. So when you store these log files in S3, you can actually perform some queries, okay, SQL queries, and you can find out, okay, these are the bottlenecks of our platform, and this is where we need to improve. So this actually gives you good clarity on what exactly needs to be checked and identified by storing those log files. Next thing is the application data. So if let's consider the case of Instagram. So there are many images people upload, and it needs to be stored somewhere so that it can be quickly accessible with lowest latency. So um, this application data, like all these images for Instagram, it can be stored in S3, and it can be pulled using different other services, as I mentioned earlier. So this is like another usage or another use which for which you can use the S3. Then, as I mentioned earlier, videos, pictures. Then in some of the cases, you may not need data on an urgent basis, or you may not know when exactly you will need that data, but you want to have that data archived somewhere, or store it for at least for a few more years. So that feature is available with S3. So normally when you store data which is quickly accessed, so that data get charged, all those access requests gets charged at a different rate. But if you want to archive that data, then it is available for you at a much lower cost. Okay. So S3 has that mechanism wherein you can move the data from like continuous access to infrequent access. So they have this algorithm or a life cycle model already set up for you. You just need to enable those configurations, and that will eventually move the data from continuously the data that has been not in use to a lower class. Basically, those are called storage classes. So it will be moved from one storage class to another storage class, and it will reduce the cost of storage. So currently, if you are charging $1 for 1 GB of data, and when you move it to the archive, it will be $0.5, and you can store that data, and whenever you want to access that data in future, you can just make a request, and that data will be available for you to view or process. So these are like some of the applications on day-to-day basis, how S3 can be used. So as I mentioned earlier, if you want to understand the user patterns, how exactly they are working with your platform or the application, then by storing that information in S3, you can perform different algorithms, and you can find out more about it. Another application is if you want to host your static site, and that static site will only have the HTML, CSS, and even to an extent, React application can be hosted on S3. You just need to enable the configuration, and that will allow you to host that site. Next thing is the encryption. So if you want to encrypt your data at rest, then you can enable the encryption provided by S3 default, or even if you want to encrypt your data first and then upload it to the S3, that is also possible. You can do it. So S3 basically has something called as streams. So whenever, or events. So basically when you upload any file, it will give you an event stating that, okay, new object is uploaded. So when you get this notification, you can either send it to the user, or you can use that notification to um, associate with another service called as Lambda. So Lambda you can consider as something which does the processing, basically a compute service. So you can run the encryption on the data file that is being uploaded, and you can put back that encrypted file and remove the old file. So that this is like a another way of doing the encryption on the files that can reside in S3. Then it provides you with the scalability, availability, as I mentioned earlier, the performance, the security, the scaling, and the archiving. And the last part is the storage classes. So storage classes you can consider for different reasons, like one for archival, one for if you are not constantly accessing the data, then it can be in the infrequent storage class, or if you are planning to access the data maybe after 5 years or 10 years, then you can store it in the glacier. So all these different storage classes provide you with the options to reduce your cost, and at the same time provides you with the data availability, and even to an extent of good security. So let's just quickly go over a few of the examples. So first one is the media processing. So if you see, when you go to Amazon S3, you will find buckets. Okay, so this is one of the bucket I have created. Bucket creation is like you are just adding the name of that bucket, but this needs to be unique. So just like Gmail, when you are creating your email ID, that email needs to be unique. Similarly, this bucket needs to be unique throughout the world. So this is something which needs to be taken care. Once you create this bucket, you can upload the files directly from here, or you can even make use of services like CLI, so command line. So from there you can upload the files. Now in this example, I am optimizing the videos which are being uploaded. So once this video is uploaded, I am triggering the Lambda. Okay, so if you see, the trigger point is set being S3. So once any file is uploaded, it will trigger an event. And if you see the same bucket which is being used for storing the media file, I am setting a trigger point. And in the code, I am using this event information. Event information basically is the name of the file and its path. So once I have this information, I perform some optimization operations. So I've made use of FFmpeg library. So this basically compresses the file. Basically, I can literally do any type of stuff. I can run the command line commands for the CLI or Linux system to any backend related operations for web applications. So literally anything I can do with Lambda. So I upload the file back in a separate bucket. So this is like a simple example. Currently, some of these things are not linked, so I don't want to try and run this. Okay, but this is a simple example how you can use the Lambda function with S3. Another example is for decrypting the stored data. So here I have set another trigger which actually gives me the event of the inbound objects that are being uploaded. So once the user uploads the encrypted data, so basically in this case, I'm working with the encryption. So user uploads the data into this directory, and once it is uploaded there, I run the code same as the previous application, and in here I have the decryption method, which will then read the file which is being uploaded, just like the event notification. It will perform the operation of decryption, and then it will put back that file in the process directory. Okay, so if you see in here, there is an incoming file. So in here, the PGP encryption method is being used, and once the file is decrypted, it is put in the process directory. Okay, so if you see, the PGP extension is gone and it is now decrypted. So this is like another example how you can use the decryption and encryption with S3. Another thing is, if you check the properties of this bucket, so I can enable the versioning. So for some reason, if I want to keep log of different versions of the files that are being stored, as some of the times when you have the same names, files maybe get overridden. So if you want to, if you prefer to keep the different versions of the files, you can enable the versioning. Then, as I mentioned earlier, there is a default encryption available for you, or even you can provide the key. So when you edit it, this basically is the default encryption provided by AWS themselves. Here you can provide your own key and encrypt the data. So this is like, it provides you with both the options, whichever you want to prefer. This is the storage class, which enables you to move to another classes for archiving the information. Then the event, whenever the new file is uploaded, then the same is being passed on to the Lambda for further processing. So this is like the example what I gave earlier. Then you can transfer the files quickly. Then you can enable the static hosting. So basically you can host a static website, you can add the redirects. Index.html is the entry point to the file, and error HTML is just in case if it is not able to serve the content when the user requests anything. So this is like some of the things. Then there is permissions wherein you can set the access level, who can access the bucket and the files of the bucket and all those aspects. So this is like a very basic overview of what are the things available with S3. Okay, so this is a reference of all the features available with S3, and in case if you want to explore more, you can go over that features. So yes, so this was a very quick and short summary of what S3 is and how you can use the AWS service.